Oh, sorry. I do
And
apologise.
just dropped his
I'm really
needle.
sorry. I'm really sorry. Please continue.
And what she wanted...
This is the churchyard of All Saints Church. This is the churchyard of All Saints Church.
in Downton, where they go to the kinema.
Yes.
Because the cinema used to be with a K.
Yes.
And they called it kinema.
I say we bring it back.
Yes.
I'm going to the kinema for the evening.
I think so too.
This is literally the slippiest path I have ever walked down in my life. It's like walking on ice.
We shall see a double feature.
Oh gosh, do you remember those?
And I insist upon bringing back the lady with the drop-down,
Where was your head then?
It was between your back and the chair.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that looked terrible. And what I meant was, she had a tray.
The intermission lady.
Yes, and when it finished...
In charge of the whole of a royal household was called a Lord Chamberlain, you idiot.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring a brand new episode of England, a castle nation.
Yes, indeed.
Oh yes, it's very exciting. The production of this episode has been through many layers of improvement.
That's not true.
It's true. I rely very much on my producer, and here she is, the great Kay Jones. And it's brilliant. Without Kay, I think it's really important that you guys know this, because it's the same with both shows, to be honest, because obviously I'm editing and doing the technical side on Kay's shows. But on my shows, first of all, the development of how it looks is very much done, between the two of us. And then also, as well, my muse, the person who I make sure, watches it and understands it and gets it, it's Kay. And any changes that Kay asks for, she always gets. But yes.
Well, not changes, just little additions or adjustments or improvements. Yeah.
Because we're about producing the best quality programmes ever.
We are.
Oh, yes. Now, today is particularly exciting because it is strangely humorous. You wouldn't expect it. I'm certainly not poking fun. It's the story itself.
Yeah.
And it's all very much, I must just say, actually, because this is really interesting, it's all to do with Anna of Cleve.
Anna of Cleve. Yeah, apparently we all say it wrong. Who knew?
Would you believe it? Who knew? Basically, Anne, A-N-N-E, is the French translation of Anna. So if I took you back to Tudor times, Anna was a name which was very popular in the sort of Germanic parts of the world and all around that part of the world. If Anna then moved to France, they would translate her name to Anne. It would be a bit like today, I said to Kate, it would be a bit like if someone from France came over called Philippe and we called him Philip.
Which we just don't do we?
No,
you would...
Because we call you the name which you are called in your native country.
Yeah,
and in her native country, she was Anna, and she wasn't of Cleves, it was of Cleve, with a K.
With a K?
Yes. Oh.
Right, I did not know that.
Oh, it's important. Special K.
It makes me think of in Downton, where they go to the kinema.
Yes.
Because the cinema used to be with a K.
Yes.
And they called it kinema.
I say we bring it back.
Yes.
I'm going to the kinema for the evening.
I think so too.
We shall see a double feature.
Oh gosh, do you remember those?
And I insist upon bringing back the lady with the drop-down,
I wonder what you were doing.
Oh, yeah, that looked terrible. And what I meant was, she had a tray.
The intermission lady.
Yes, and when it finished, the lady in our cinema, if she sold everything, it would like flop up so she could walk out.
Oh, right, okay, I don't remember that.
It was like a tray that dropped
Mine
down.
must have never been sold out. But it was sort of lit up, wasn't it?
Yes.
And yes, it would go round your neck, and it was like this tray thing. It was full of ice creams and sweets and things.
Yes. Can I have some round please fruit pastels, please?
In a box.
Yes. Of course you can.
Days.
Thank you very much.
Or
I
an
loved
ice
it.
cream.
Yes.
Yeah.
I never had an ice cream in the cinema because I did once when I was young and I dropped it.
Oh no.
Yeah, couldn't find it.
Devastating.
I only found it afterwards.
I very much used to like a choc ice. Do you remember choc ices?
Yeah.
Like a rectangular ice cream with chocolate around.
And the chocolate,
and they were in like a
it was
wrapper.
like the chocolate was sprayed on.
Yeah, it
was
was
really weird.
It was. They were in like a sort of papery type wrapper.
Yeah.
Waxed papery wrapper. Do you remember this?
It was like butter.
It was a bit like that. Imagine a pack of butter, but smaller, and it's ice cream covered in chocolate. Chalk ice.
Yes.
Do they still make chalk ices? I have no idea.
I don't know either, and I haven't seen.
No.
I must just say, thank you all so much for your rather wonderful comments about Kay's last Yarny Book Club.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. I'm so pleased that you enjoyed it so much.
I know.
It is the coolest series ever to produce.
Yeah.
Particularly because Kay gets so excited about the book reviews.
I know. Well, I do, but then I just get really nervous because I'm worried that everything I say is going to be like rubbish.
The thing is, though, you don't get nervous in the filming stage.
No.
No, because you can't shut her up.
No,
she's off. It's brilliant. That's what you want.
It's usually post-filming when I just like lose my nerve and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just raved on about this book, and what if people think it's rubbish? They'll think I'm like...
It's an opinion, that's all it is.
It is an opinion, yeah. I know, it's an opinion.
So fear not.
Yeah.
Fear not, act casual. A bit of housekeeping, and that's because I'm really sorry to have to talk for just a moment about advertising, but basically the reason why I'm doing this is we've had a couple of comments recently about people saying, oh, amazing show, thank you so much. First time I've seen ads on your show. There has never been and will never be ads on our show. But as long-term viewers may remember, a few years ago, YouTube changed their rules.
Their policy.
And YouTube now can turn ads on your video and take the revenue if they have a reason to do so.
Yeah.
Now, we can always get rid of the reason to do so, but YouTube are clever because they turn them on first and then you have to tell them, no, you can't do that. And the problem is, if those ads get turned on when it's the middle of the night here, we can't spot it and turn them off. So I don't want anyone to think that anything has changed, because it hasn't. Since the day we started, we have believed passionately in no advertising, because we want you to be able to trust what you're watching and also trust what we're saying. That's the reason why we don't take anything for free off anyone and then talk about it positively on the show. We pay for everything so we can give you our honest opinion, as Kay quite often does. And I do too. It's at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, I think. It would be so cool if more people, I think, said actually how things were really, and then we could all make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
Rather than just saying, oh, that's marvellous.
I think people find it difficult in today's world to be honest about things.
About the good and the bad.
Yeah, both ways. And I completely understand why that's a difficulty. But yeah, I mean, we've prided ourselves really in always being honest about everything, and sometimes people don't like that, and we accept that, but at the end of the day, that if what we're saying, we're being completely honest, because we always have been, and
so
we always
long as
will
there's
be.
Integrity,
yes,
then whether it's a good opinion or a bad opinion, then everything's okay. It's only if you lose your integrity that you've got a problem.
Absolutely. So the ads, so I mean, if you see an ad, that's just YouTube doing that when we can't do anything about it.
Well, and then I can always turn it off.
Yeah, as soon as we realise what's going on, we stop it.
Yes.
But there might have been a chunk of time when we're asleep,
a few hours,
where you might have seen an ad.
Yes.
But
sincere apologies for that.
Yeah, rest assured that we never have had any revenue from ads, and we never will have any revenue from ads.
No. Sorry for talking about that bonus. And I think I do think it's important to mention that, the reason why we don't have those ads and we don't want that income is because we're supported completely by our Bakery Bear patrons. And, we think that's the way that it should be.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for those Bakery Bear patrons.
Absolutely.
Because without them, we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't be doing this, no.
No ads, never will be. And if ever you do see some, the chances are I'm going to spot it. Well, I always do spot it. But if you feel so inclined and you want to, leave a comment on the video or drop me a line, by all means do. And, that. And I thank the person who dropped me a line for the recent one, which was the last episode.
Yes.
Because you enabled me to find it quicker than I would have done and turn them off. So, yes, enough of the boring stuff.
Yes.
Because we have too much loveliness today.
We do.
Oh, yes. Oh, new cast on from me.
Yes, I have 2 new cast-ons, I believe,
Okay.
but I will make sure I say it. We missed one. We missed a new cast-on of mine last time, so
Adjustments have been
we've
made.
added it on.
Adjustments are always made. I think we should find out about all those new cast-ons. As I say, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay, so my first new cast-on
Bing!
is a pair of socks for Bryony. Now, this is a really fun and exciting pair of socks, right? So a couple of weeks ago, she was sat at the bottom of the stairs putting her shoes on before she was going out to school, and she said to me, "Oh, do you know what would be a fun pair of socks?" So my ears pricked up. I was like, "Oh, go on then, tell me." She said, "Oh, I think I'd quite like a longer pair of socks so that they appeared above my boots." And what she wanted was witchy stockings in socks. So do you know those kind of iconic stockings that witches wear? Think like Wizard of Oz, do you know, when they disappear under the house? So I asked her what colour she wanted to go with the black, because there's always a black, isn't there? But then the other colour can be different. So she told me, and I'm like, right, okay, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to dye some yarn for you, so that they're really special socks. And what I decided to dye was, do you know last time, and I'm going to show you them in finished things because I've actually finished the pair. Do you know I was knitting the pair of socks using the yarn base that was a bit thicker? It was like a heavy fingering rather than the standard sock weight. Well, I used that base because I thought if these are going to be longer socks, it would be good if I had to knit fewer stitches, because I'd just get them done a bit quicker. And I had the yarn in my stash, you know, ready to dye. So I was like, why not? Let's do this. So that's what I've done. And I'm on the heel flap of the first sock, but I'll show you the yarns first. And the colours are so fun. So she wanted green to go with the black, and she wanted a very specific shade of green. She wanted it to be very vibrant. And she showed me a couple of images, and I thought, I was like, right, so I got that sort of planted in my head. I could see that in my mind's eye. And I thought about what dye colours to use. And I kind of had it in my head before I even dyed it. And luckily it worked out. So yeah, here are the 2 colours that I dyed up. And they're just so fun. They came out perfectly. The black could do with being a bit blacker. It's a funny one, dyeing black, because when I was dyeing this, it looked really black in the pot. You know, I kept checking it, and I did add more dye a couple of times. And I thought, yeah, that's black enough. I wanted a bit of tone in there, a bit of tonality. But it actually, I mean, it looks great in the sock. It could have done with being a bit blacker. It's more of a really dark grey. But I think that's all right, isn't it? Yeah, and then the green is just fantastic. For the black, I just used one dye colour, and I used Landscape Dye's Currawong, which is named after a black Australian bird, I believe. I really like this black dye because I find that the jacquard black, it tends to leave when you dye with it. It kind of looks black, but when you look in the pot, it's got a sort of brownish hue to it. And this one is more of a true black for me. So yeah, I've used this one. I just really could have done with putting a bit more dye in there, but I think it's fine. And then the green, I used 2 shades of green for this. I used Dharma Dye's Sour Apple, and then I dyed it with this, what did I do? I can't remember exactly what. I think I put Sour Apple and the other green, which was Jacquard Chartreuse. I put a bit of both of those into the pot, and then after that I adjusted it and added more. I can't remember exactly how I did it because this is just a one of a kind. There's a lot of chartreuse in it and quite a lot of sour apple because I really wanted it to be sort of quite on the neon side. So here's the sock. I'm actually now on the heel flap, which you'll see in a second, but yeah, the stripes, I think it just looks perfect for a witchy stocking sock, doesn't it? And the leg, I've actually knitted to, I think it's 8 inches. I got to a point and I said, look, I think this is long enough. And she actually put it on her foot and sort of pulled it up to where it would be above her ankle, do you know, where the heel turn, we'll start, heel flap, we'll start. And it was plenty long enough. She's like, oh yeah, that's plenty long enough. I did think about casting on more stitches and then reducing down, to give a bit more room around her calf. But I don't know whether I need to do that, because I think it's just going to be at that point where if I'd done it any longer, I would have had to have done that. And we tried it on and it was fine. So yeah, this is what it looks like so far. Doesn't it look like a witch's stocking? The witch in the Wizard of Oz that's under the house, are hers black and green, or are they another colour? Are they purple?
I think they might be purple.
They might be purple, might they?
They might be purple and black.
Yeah, purple
Striped.
and black. Yeah, I can't quite remember. But, green and black is a very common witchy stocking colour, isn't it? So she wanted the cuff in green. I did ask her. She wanted the cuff in green. And then I'm doing the heel.
She had very specific instructions.
She was very specific. She was very specific.
Wow.
She wanted quite narrow stripes, which is a bit of a devil for me because it's more ends to weaving. But, what the lady wants, the lady gets. So, yeah, there's quite narrow stripes. And then she wanted I said, do you want a green or a black heel flap? She wanted black, which I'm glad. I suggested black because I thought it might be too green otherwise. So, yeah, black heel flap. And then what she wants, she doesn't want a solid colour toe. She wants me to carry on the stripes all the way down the toe. So I'm like, right, okay. I didn't say, it's more ends to weave in, but I was like, yeah, that's fine. I said, I'm not quite sure what will happen right at the tip of the toe. You might get a bit more, you might get a bit less. And she's like, oh, that's all right. I'm like, oh, it will be all right. So, yeah, but I think it's looking great, isn't it?
Imagine if she'd asked for a striped heel flap.
I know. Oh, no, that would have been a no. Not going into the realms of that. That would be a nightmare, wouldn't it? So, yeah, I've nearly finished the heel flap. So I cast on. I've done the same thing as I've done for the pink socks, which you'll see later. So I cast on 56 stitches using a 2.75mm needle. And that gives me the size of a sock. For me, that I put the pink ones I've tried on, they're perfect. And Bryony's tried this on and it fits great. So it gives me the equivalent size of a 64 stitch sock with a standard sock weight yarn. So yeah, but I'm only having to knit 56 stitches, so it's gone quicker than it would do had I done a 64 stitch sock. My only sort of thing with this base is it's got cashmere in it and there's only 10% nylon. So I don't know at this stage whether I might hand wash these. I think I will. I'm just a bit worried about putting them in the washer and then that cashmere element of it causing felting. So I think I might hand wash this pair, as I think I will do with the other one, because they're lovely, aren't they? And I don't want them to get felted, or I don't want them, anything to happen to them by bunging them in the washer. So yeah, I'm just about to finish the heel flap and then turn and pick up, and then it's just a normal sock after that. And I don't think I've ever knit a leg this long before in my life. It's to me, it's enormous. I normally knit a leg that's round about 5 inches for like Dan and Bryony usually. And for me, I like the shorty socks. I don't even know how long they are. You'll see later because I'm going to show you a bunch of shorty socks actually. So it went quite quick because it's just 56 stitches. I'm doing 6 rounds per stripe, and that I think that was working out nicely. The cuff I did a bit longer than normal because this is going to sit higher up a leg. I thought I'll do a bit of a chunkier cuff so that it'll grip nicely. And I can't remember how many rounds I did. Oh no, I could tell you because as always I'm using a little notebook. This one is a Leuchtturm. So I did. I haven't written it down. Oh, I have 16 rounds. I did 16 rounds. It just looks longer because the yarn is thicker. So yeah, 16 rounds. I cast these on the 4th of April. So we'll see how long they take me to do. I really like knitting things that someone really wants. That to me is enough motivation. Even if it might not have been something that I would have automatically thought independently I was going to knit. If somebody says to me, oh, I would love that, then that's all the motivation I need to then go off and create that thing that person wants, because I know how much they're going to like it. And I showed her this last night, and she's like, oh. And when I showed her the yarns, it was so sweet. So I wound up the yarns and I showed her, and she went, they're perfect. So I thought, yes, I'm successfully, doing the good mum thing and making her something that she really wants. So yeah, those are her, I'm just calling her Witchy Stocking Socks at the minute. Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
It's a new cast on.
Yay! Bing! Oh my goodness, that is a very rare event, isn't it?
No, it isn't. Okay. It's the 4th month of the year, and this is my 3rd cast on.
Oh.
Yes.
Is that not considered rare then?
3 and 4. I've only missed 1 cast on in 1 month.
Okay.
It's a hat. I'm knitting a hat for my brother, who some of you may know. He's done the music for the show.
Yes, for
Woohoo.
Dom. Brother Dom.
Yes, yes.
That makes him sound like a monk. He's not a monk.
Brother Dom, who is actually this week recording at Abbey Road. That's exciting, isn't it? I don't know the full details of what he's recording. I shall find out afterwards. But he's missing his drum lesson on Friday.
Oh.
So I'm going to give him detention. I'm going to give him lines. So I thought that it would be really cool, because I knitted him a hat a few years ago. It was a Tin Can Knits design.
Right.
And it had looked like horns or something going up it.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Oh, I can't remember what it's called.
No.
They also, I think there's a jumper with a similar motif on it.
Oh, right. Horns. Colourwork.
Antler.
No.
Antler.
Oh, the antler hat.
Oh, I've remembered. Oh my goodness.
I think there is a hat called the antler hat, isn't there?
Yes,
I don't remember what it looks like, but that sounds familiar.
It looks like it's got antlers on it, like going straight up.
Is that why it's called the
pants.
antler hat?
I think so.
Oh, right.
I could be wrong. So I knitted it for him, and I didn't realise. I think it's because his hair is quite bouffant.
He's got quite a lot of hair, hasn't he?
Well, not bad for a man of his age.
No.
It's going a bit grey now, but that's okay.
Yeah, but he just looks blonde because he was a redhead. He was much redder than you.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, he was ginger properly.
He was properly ginger.
I was not.
Dom. Yeah. It just looks blonde now. It doesn't really look grey.
No. So it didn't really fit him. So I think that he politely pulled it on his head, felt a bit stupid, and never wore the hat again. He's never told me. Yes. So this it is bigger, hopefully.
It will. Well, I don't know. I can't remember that hat, but this should fit him.
Well, it's going to be bigger than that hat was.
Yeah.
I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So it's the angel hat is the hat that I'm knitting. Now, I don't have much to show you, but look at this cake. Oh,
that's a nicely caked yarn.
That's what I call a cake.
Yeah.
But the yarn's weird. It's got all bits in it.
It's a tweedy yarn.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, right. Okay, you're being funny. He's being funny.
It's called humour cake.
Oh, sorry. I just thought it was called stupidity.
Yes. So it's tweedy yarn, and it's fun to knit with. I've got to say, I cast this on yesterday, and it feels so much more sort of pliable, and it's got so much more give than the Jameson and Smith.
Right.
And will that be the amount of plies that it is? Why is that? Why?
Well, there'll be a number of reasons.
Right.
Yeah, there's more plies in this. I think this is a...
So when I say I mean...
Hang on, I'll tell you, because I can see the end here. It's a 3-ply.
Right, and what's the
Jameson and Smith is a 2-ply.
Right.
So it's one more ply.
Yeah.
This is a superwash.
Okay.
Jameson and Smith is not. So I think the superwash process does make the yarn feel different.
Gives it more spring.
Well, I don't
You would think it would remove spring,
know.
wouldn't you?
It depends on the fibre as well. I don't know what fibre this is.
Right.
So I'll tell you what the yarn is first of all, or Dan can tell you. No, you don't know.
I don't know what the yarn is.
So the yarn is West Yorkshire Spinners Colour Lab Aran, and this colourway is Racing Green.
And it looks very racing green.
It does. On the front it says 100% British wool. On the back it says 96% British wool, 4% viscose. Is that not a little bit naughty?
Unless they mean that the whole skein is 100% British. but it is a bit naughty. I agree with you.
So it's 96% British wool, 4% viscose. The viscose are the neppy bits.
Right.
So I suppose the element that's the yarn, the actual yarn is 100%, but then the neppy bits. So you get 166 metres per 100 grams. And yeah, it's machine washable. It says 40 degrees, but no tumble dry, reshape whilst damp. So that's good that it can be put in the washing machine. We can tell him that, but not to put it in the dryer. You should talk about this. It's your project.
Well, I will talk about it, but you normally hold things up. You normally take it off me while I'm talking and hold it up.
This is the tail.
Yes, that's correct. Have you not seen a long tail cast on before? You end up with a long tail. You weave that in at the end?
Yeah, but look.
Yeah. Do you get me?
I often don't.
So it is the angel hat, and it's the perfect hat, I think, for Dom. What I love about that hat is it would look good in a girly colour on a girl.
Yes.
And in a boyish colour on a boy.
Absolutely.
And he walks, I think they've got a number of dogs, don't they?
Oh, I lose track.
So do I.
Yeah.
Anyway, he does a lot of walking, so he'll definitely appreciate this. And he also lives the other side of the country to us, and it tends to be quite rainy and a bit sort of windy and slightly cold. So it's the perfect thing. And the yarn, I'm really enjoying working with the yarn, which is really nice. Because there's nothing worse, I think. I can't stand it when I knit with the yarn where when I'm knitting, it hurts my fingers if there's no give. Does it with you?
Yeah, I don't tend to knit with yarn like that.
You don't tend to knit with yarn that doesn't have any give?
No.
Right. Is that because you would just go, I'm not knitting with this?
I don't know. I don't know that it's a conscious thought, really. I just don't. I mean,
right.
If I wanted to. I don't tend to knit with woolly wools like you do.
Is that a woolly wool?
No, I'm thinking of the Shetland one.
Okay.
But this one is quite a woolly wool.
The thing is,
it is a little bit prickly.
Let is a woolly wool, and that's got tons of give.
Yeah, I think that's strange as well, because Let Lopi is a single ply, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every yarn's different, isn't it?
Yes.
This does have a bit of a prickle, which bothers me a little bit for a hat.
Oh, he won't mind.
I'm hoping he won't mind. He's got a lot of hair, hasn't he? So I don't think I could wear this next to skin.
And he'll just pull it on and get on with it.
I didn't think
He's a dude.
I didn't think it would be that prickly, to be honest.
It's properly rough.
It is prickly,
That's
isn't
surprising.
I think if you are sensitive to these things, I think you'd sort of struggle with this.
Yeah.
It looks very nice, but it definitely is a bit more on the rustic side.
Yeah.
Which is surprising because it's superwash, and normally you think of superwash yarns, don't you, as being quite soft. But it doesn't say superwash anywhere on it, but it does, on the label, it has got the 40-degree symbol, and there isn't a hand going into it. So that to me means that it's machine washable. So I'm hoping I'm interpreting that correctly. So yeah, I did actually buy 2 balls of this because I wasn't sure how much it would take for the hat, because it's only 166 metres. I don't think I would buy it again because it is a bit prickly. But I think for this purpose it will be cool.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the pattern, it's the angel hat. I should just say that that's one of my designs, but it's a free pattern. I put it out, some years ago. It was a thank you to everyone, really, for all of, the kindness that was shown towards Dan when he was going through his medical stuff. So yeah, that's a free pattern, the angel hat. It's designed for an Aran weight yarn, and it's a unisex design. It's like a slightly ribby, slightly textured pattern. But yeah, it's free on Ravelry, free on Lovecrafts, if you want to go and download your own copy.
What else is on your needles?
Oh, talking of hats, I'm knitting a hat.
Wow.
Oh, it's in one of my favourite bags. Look, I made this bag. This embroidery I did during the summer of stitching 2 summers ago.
Yes.
Not last summer, the one before.
Yes.
So we all created together this lovely embroidery, this gorgeous little mushroom house. And then I actually made it into a bag. That wasn't part of the series, it was just to produce the embroidery. But a lot of people then just followed my lead and went and made it into a bag or used it in patchwork or whatever afterwards. So yeah, I made it into this Christmassy themed bag. I used all Liberty fabric, but it's quilting cotton, not the Tana lawn. And I use this all the time. It's the perfect sock size, it's the perfect hat size in this case. So yeah, I'm knitting a hat. This has been my bedtime knitting since I cast it on, actually, and it is the perfect bedtime knitting. And this is a hat that I haven't mentioned for a while, actually. I've made 2 of these previously. This is a hat that I designed myself. Yeah, I haven't spoken about it in terms of my plans for the pattern because I do have plans, but it's something that will appear later in the year. So fear not, I haven't forgotten about it. It's very much in the works. I've knitted 2 of them, and one of them, which was in a Pixie Yarns, and it was in a tin roof colourway, because I was calling this hat the tin roof hat just because of the name of it was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was the colourway, and I called it the tin roof hat because of the colourway name. But yeah, I wear that hat every single day, and I've been wearing it literally every single day since I made it. What I wanted to do, because it fits Bryony really well, she doesn't really like wearing hats, but that one I got to try on and it fits her really well. She said it feels nice, because I wanted to send her off to university with just at least one hat, that she could wear if she wanted to. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to make her a hat. So first of all, I got her to choose some yarn, and she chose... Yes, it's for Bryony. Oh. So she chose this one, which is from Pixie Yarn again. I do very much like Sophie's yarn. So she chose this one, which is a mixture of browns and a tan colour and a very pretty purple. And it's called, quite appropriately, she didn't know it was called this when she chose it. It's called Queen Bee.
Oh.
So that's perfect for Bryony, isn't it? And yeah, it's Pixie Yarn. So yeah, I'm knitting another of my... I probably won't call it, ultimately, the tin roof hat because of the purpose I'm using it for. But anyway, I'm knitting another one of my hats, and here it is. And it's just knitting up so nice. So this hat has got a folded brim. It's purely knit stitches and some knit 2 togethers for the decreases, but that's all it is. I wanted to create this hat that would make the perfect project for me for bedtime knitting. For anyone else, it's that sort of time when you don't have sort of brain space to think about a pattern, but you just want to knit something, you want to do something with your hands. So it could be, while you're waiting to pick your kids up from school, it could be in a dentist's waiting room, or at football if you're watching your kids, all of those times when you want to be knitting something but you're not able to sort of look at a pattern and things like that. And I just love it. So it's got this, you can probably see that the transition is here, the folded brim is here, and what I do is I knit the folded brim portion in a smaller needle, and then I change up a little bit to a slightly bigger needle to knit the body. And the folded portion, if I show you the inside, what I do is I'll knit half. No, I don't knit half. So I knit the brim to sort of twice the length that you want it, and then you fold it inwards, and on that sort of next round you then pick up a stitch on the cast on, knit it together with a stitch on your needle. So it produces what I think looks like it's machine knitted, look.
Yeah.
So that's the inside. Can you see that? I think it looks like it's been produced on a machine, which I find very satisfying. And then I changed the needle size a little bit because the reason I did that is I wanted the brim, because it's double thickness on the brim, so I wanted that to be a bit denser and a bit more windproof. So that's the bit that goes around your forehead and your ears in my case, because I like my ears covered with a hat. And then the top portion, you know, the head portion, I've just done in a slightly bigger needle. And also what that does is if you get a yarn that is, you know, you might think it's pooling a bit when you start knitting with it, because this one, it didn't, well, you can see, can't you? It didn't, I don't know if you call it pooling or if you just call it a bit of a flash here. Can you see that? That's not as visible with the naked eye. These things always show up more, don't they, on camera? But what happens when you start knitting the body is because you've gone up a needle size, it changes. And it looks, to me, it looks much more variegated. So yeah, and I'm just knitting away on the body of it now until I get to the right length. You know, that can be adjusted depending on your own requirements, and then do some decreases and it'll be done. And it's just such a pleasant knit, this. And at the moment I've only done one size, but I will probably do a size below as well.
See, the thing is, though, I think with hats, it's all right with it being a pleasant knit, but what makes that hat so good is you really like wearing it.
I love wearing it.
Because there's loads of hats which you don't like wearing.
No, absolutely. This is the sort of hat, and I literally wear this every day, don't I? My initial concern...
There's got to be something about it that makes it really wearable.
Yeah. I mean, my initial concern was, because a lot of people, when they do this sort of folded brim, is they'll do a purl round here at this point. So, because I've read some comments that it sort of flips up if you don't do that. And mine doesn't flip up, but I do understand what they mean, you know, because it's not a rib, it doesn't sort of go in and it doesn't grip your head in the way that a ribbed hat would. But I like a hat that's not really sucky to my head. I don't like hats that are like that to your head. And I think as well, they're not particularly flattering when it's like the shape of your head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like a hat to look like it's a hat on your head, not that your head is the hat. Do you get what I mean? So I quite like that it just sits on my head and doesn't like suffocate it. You know, I really love wearing it. And after I've made this one for Bryony, I'm going to start another one for me, I think, because it's just been the most ideal bedtime knitting. I've got no worries that I'm going to forget what I'm doing, because all I've got to do is knit and count my rows, and that's it.
Cool.
And it's just perfect. So yeah, absolutely loving my hat knitting.
Cool. It's the Winter at Pemberley cowl.
Oh my goodness.
And it's knitted in this gorgeous yarn. And I'm sure you're impressed with my hand winding skills of my green.
It's terrible.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
I should have wound those scales.
Kay was furious with me when she saw this the other day.
So messy and horrible.
This is the Merino Yak, and it's Regia, and it is just so perfect for these types of projects. I'm a good way through now this middle section, which is really cool. And I think the more I knit through this middle section, the more it makes the ivy look like just stupendous. And it's going to be so cool when this then reappears
on the other side. Yeah,
but then also as well, this band here with the grey before, and I mean, it is brilliant. You know, it's so brilliant. It's just so well structured. I mean, you're actually quite a good designer.
You're actually quite a good husband.
Oh, thanks. No, I see. I take that as it's meant. It's challenging up here. It's really challenging up here, but it's the type of challenge that I really, really enjoy. And I'm loving as well the theme, because it's Pride and Prejudice, because I love Pride and Prejudice so much.
It looks great.
Yeah.
Look at that.
It's going to look so great on. I think it's the best one of the three. And I think it's a combination of the design, the yarn, and also the fact that, you know, the colour work's not bad. I mean, I know it could be better.
But do you know what? Let's see what blocking does.
We've learned through experience that they always block well.
Yeah. I think people have asked me if I'm going to release this pattern, actually. A few people have asked me, and I probably will. But do you know what I might be tempted to do? Just to check that the design isn't too tricky, I might just get someone who's a bit of an expert colourwork knitter to test it for me, just to see what another knitter thinks of it. Because if it's too too much of a tricky colour work, then I don't know. You know, I don't want people to be sort of cross because it's not coming out very well.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the type of person that you are. I'm not cross.
No, I know it does. Yeah, I like things to be.
The thing is, though, I mean, it's probably a good idea what you're saying, because you shouldn't always produce patterns that just suit one particular ability level. So if an accomplished,
that's right.
I think an accomplished colourwork knitter will do that in their sleep.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. It's the
when you think about some of the yoked.
Yeah, I mean, what makes it a little bit tricky, I suppose, is that you do have long runs where you've got to catch your flows. That's the challenge, I think, with the design.
Yeah, it's the challenge. Equally, though, like we just said, we need to look at it after it's been blocked.
Yes, absolutely. I won't do anything until I've blocked it. And
because if it blocks well, then... But anyway, winter at Pemberley.
Yes.
With the Regia Merino yak.
It's beautiful.
And it's just great. It's the square needles, but on the cable things.
And you... And you're doing that on a small circular, and are you not minding it for that? Because you don't really like small circulars these days.
No, I don't have a problem with small circulars.
Well, you're doing your hats on DPNs.
Yeah, that's because I'm trying to get my DPN skills to a stratospheric level.
Right. Okay.
I want to be able to knit on DPNs like an absolute boss.
Right.
So that I could then perhaps even consider knitting a Gansey.
A Gansey on the really long DPNs.
Yes.
Gosh, that'd be a thing, wouldn't it?
It really would. So that's my plan anyway, and I cover it regularly in my self-contained knitter show. But yeah, that's the reason why, because I did have some people commenting, why on earth are you knitting a hat on DPNs? It's because I want my DPN skills to get better and better and better.
But also, you know, you enjoy it, don't you? So
I do enjoy it, but I like to push myself, and it's just, you know, it's fun, and I'm doing a better job. The ladders aren't there, and I know how to alleviate those ladders. So it's really great. You know, I can feel, and it's like a natural change in ability. It's not like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's like, I think once you've knitted a bit, you know instinctively how things should feel and the tension things should be at. So it's great, you know, now to be doing it.
Practice, isn't it? Yeah.
Repetitions.
Yeah.
What else is on your needles?
Before I show you that, I don't know whether for the hat that I've just shown that I said it was a new cast on.
Okay.
But the hat was a new cast on.
I hope you're not trying to double count.
I am not.
You're not trying to get an extra ping.
I'm not trying to get an extra ping. No, you missed a ping last time, so...
Okay.
I was lacking a ping, but no, I'm not trying to get an extra one. So
you're lacking ping. You need more ping in your life.
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean.
Neither do I. Come on, what's in that bag?
So the final thing I've got to show you is another pair of socks, and these socks are in a bag I made actually quite some years ago with some fabric. It's Little House on the Prairie fabric, and I bought this fabric from Little Skein in the Big Wool. Oh, I think, have I got that right? I think that's the name of the shop. Yeah, but I think that's where I bought this fabric from, and I made it into this little bag which I use a lot. I sort of patchwork to the bottom with some of those little squares that you can get. Those, are they called mini charm squares? Yeah, so I use this one a lot. So in this bag is a pair of my Scrappy Quilt Socks. Now the Scrappy Quilt Socks, I'm going to show you a finished pair actually a bit later. But this is a design that I spoke about a couple of episodes ago, and I'm going to be releasing this design on the 8th of May, which is next month now. It's not long, it's less than a month now. That's exciting. Because on the 8th of May, it's our 10-year anniversary of the show. So I wanted to design something and put it out as a special, you know, a special little thing. So this is a pair of socks that I designed for that purpose. Now, I showed these and spoke about these on our last patron show, our last pop show, and a lot of people were asking if we could have a knit-along for this pattern when it comes out. And we've not done a knit-along in ages, have we? So let's have a knit-along. We're going to have a knit-along for this pair of socks when I put the pattern out. This pair that I'm knitting here is the second pair. So in the pattern, I've done 2 examples, just so you can see different ways of how they can be knitted up. So this is the finished sock. Now, you didn't see this one finished, So this is finished now, and isn't it pretty? So this one I've knitted using a mini skein bundle from Polka Dot Creek. It was a mini skein bundle, which is part of Shelley's blanket club, and this particular set was the April set of yarns. So in these clubs you get 9 10-gram minis, because what she's doing is there's 9 because this club is actually for one of my designs, which is just amazing. It's for my Stitching Time blanket, so that's what she's dyed these up for, and each of the blocks in my Stitching Time blanket is made up of 9 different yarns, so that's why there's 9 in each set.
And what does a Stitching Time save you?
Saves 9. I never thought about that. So yeah, I've got one finished, so pretty, and the other one I've only got 3 more colours to go. I'm on the foot, and I've passed the gusset decreases, and I'm just working down the foot. So I've got 2 more colours in the pattern, and then the toe. So this stitch pattern that I've created, the reason it's called the Scrappy Quilt Socks, scrappy because obviously you're using bits and pieces of yarn, but the quilt element is because the design, each of the little squares, if you like, my inspiration was a half square triangle quilt. So half of the square is like reverse stocking stitch and half is stocking stitch. And what it does is it produces a sock with like huge squish factor. If I hold it up for you, can you see how poofy and squishy and lovely the sock is? And aren't these colours just gorgeous? I've loved knitting these yarns. Every single colour I've really enjoyed. They're just so lovely. So pretty. And I've got, so it was 9 10-gram minis, and the bits that I've got left, I do have a little bit left over from each of the colours, look. I haven't weighed it, but I imagine there might be sort of 3 grams maybe of each of the colours, so I would have enough to pop into like a little mitered square project if you've got one of those on the go, or a granny stripe or whatever. So it's a brilliant use of this set of minis, and if you knit the leg a bit longer as well, you'd have even less left, or knit this is the size medium. I haven't tested this particular mini set with a size large, so I couldn't say for whether you'd have enough doing it with a size large, but definitely small and medium, you are golden. So yeah, I've almost finished the second sock. I'm going to show you a finished pair in what's off my needles, because that pair is finished, and these are in testing now and almost through testing. My testers have just been brilliant, and they've whizzed through the socks at like lightning speed. It's just been brilliant. Everyone's really enjoyed it, said how much they've loved knitting them, so that's been brilliant. There's 2 tutorials in the pattern. There's a tutorial for picking up on a garter edged heel flap, which is what I've put in here, and then also for weaving in the ends on the inside. That reminds me, right? Talking of weaving in ends, I've been seeing lately a lot of people using a particular join in scrappy projects, and it's called the clasp weft join, I think it was called. And I hadn't tried this before, and I have seen some people using it for socks, saying it was sort of invisible, and I was like, well, I need to have a look at this. So I tried it. I went and I found a tutorial and I tried it, and I think it's a really good join, and I will do a tutorial for it myself. However, I wouldn't use it for socks for a couple of reasons, and the main reason is that you can't actually say exactly where the colour change will happen because of the nature of the join. It might be a few stitches off, and for me, when you're doing a scrappy sock, I want it to be clean. Do you know what I mean? If you don't mind that, and you don't mind that the colour change happens a little bit further on, then that might not be a problem. But also, I don't think it is completely invisible. It's really good. I like it, it's really good, but I don't think it is completely invisible. So I would definitely use this join for things like scrappy blankets, scrappy shawls. Do you know where it wouldn't matter so much if the join was a little bit visible, or if, you know, the colour change happened not at exactly the spot that you thought it might, kind of thing, then I think it would be a great one. So I am going to do a tutorial for it, but I'm not going to use it for socks, just because I'm just really picky and really fussy. I think that's the thing. So I still prefer to just weave them in at the end.
Right, it's time to continue the story of the Tudors.
Yes.
Last time we met Henry VIII and his first 3 wives. This time we're back to explore the wonderful Tudor mansion at Helmsley Castle, and also to tell the story of the first and actually the last great Tudor king. This is England, a castle nation.
Have you ever thought how the world we live in today came to be? Why do so many of us live in houses made from bricks? How do most of us end up in a supermarket every week? How did some of us get the surnames we have? And why even do many modern day jobs exist?
The thing I love the most about history is we can get the answers to all this and so much more. It's always fascinated me when I've looked back through time to try and identify the things which relate to you and me today. And in this series, that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and marry the ancient with the modern. We're going to take a look at the end of the ancient world, a world that our ancestors knew so well. And we're going to tell the story of how it all started to change and become the modern world that you and I live in today.
"1,000 years ago, that is what the majority of England looked like. The houses we lived in were simple wooden structures, and the lives that most of us led were rustic and hard, to say the least. But a change was on the horizon. A technological innovation from the continent was about to burst onto the scene that would completely transform the lives of all of us.
The dawn of the castle had come, and in this series, we're going to tell its story. Where did these gigantic structures come from? Why were they invented? And why were so many built so quickly?
And then it gets really interesting, because how did this medieval structure, reminiscent of the buildings of ancient Rome, come to inspire completely the towns and cities of England, from the houses we live in to the shops we buy from?
Along the way, we're going to tell the story of the kings and queens who unsuspectingly ushered in this change. A change that would lead us on a path to something completely unexpected, to civil war and a republic. This is a truly epic tale that I can't wait to tell you. Welcome to England, a castle nation. Welcome back everyone to England, a castle nation. You join me in a second episode from the wonderful Helmsley Castle, and I'm stood on top of the Inner Bailey Mound, and let me tell you, the view from up here is pretty spectacular. In our first episode from this wonderful place, we discovered how Helmsley Castle was built by Walter Esbeck, and then how it passed down through his family to his distant cousin, Thomas Manners, who was also a best friend of Henry VIII, probably the most infamous of all the Tudor kings. Now, along the way, we started to discover a little bit about what life was like for normal people in Tudor England and how they spent most of their time out working the fields. In today's episode, we're going to pick up the story of Henry VIII and finish it off, and my goodness, it's going to be quite the ride. But along the way, we're also going to start to delve a little bit deeper into what life was like for the normal man and woman who lived in Tudor England. Because just a stone's throw from Helmsley Castle lies All Saints Church. And as Henry VIII was running through his 6 wives, the population of England was trying to get to grips with a brand new religion. And it was all based from places like this. How on earth did they do it? We'll find out later on in the show, because we have a story to continue and we have a Tudor mansion to explore. Now, when I saw you last time, I left you with a bit of a cliffhanger, didn't I? Because Henry VIII, good King Henry, he'd finally found himself a wife who could give him a son and heir, Queen Jane Seymour. But unfortunately, she died in childbirth. So what on earth would happen next? To pick up the tale, we're going to head away from Helmsley Castle down onto the banks of the River Rye. Welcome everyone to the banks of the River Rye. And this is actually the reason why Helmsley even is here, because it was a ford, a crossing point on this river that had been used for thousands of years, where that very first tiny settlement formed. Walter Esbeck then arrived in the 12th century and built his castle, and the town of Helmsley formed. So this is a really sort of rich, full of history spot, and it's the whole reason why this story is taking place here in Helmsley. So it's wonderful to be here. But all of that is in the dark and distant past, because it is of course the year 1538, and we're en route to that thriving Tudor town of Helmsley. After decades of civil war that our fathers and our grandfathers would remember, finally there is some sort of joy to be had, because King Henry VIII has finally given us what we need to sort of secure our future and to make sure that there's never going to be a civil war again. We have a son and heir. But why is it then that there's a dark cloud hanging over Helmsley and all of Tudor England? Why is it that our Lord and Master, Thomas Manners, who of course owns Helmsley Castle, why is it that he's never here? He's always off down in London, taking care of his friend, King Henry VIII. It's because the Queen, who made all this possible, who gave us that heir to the throne, is dead.
England was bereft with grief, and it all stemmed from its royal capital here in London. King Henry VIII had worn black every day since Queen Jane Seymour had been buried at St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle the autumn before. Now, as Easter dawned, that grief was turning to anger. As each month passed without a queen by his side, the king became more and more of a tyrant. It seems the focus of a wife kept Henry's paranoias in check. Now, with time on his hands, he became convinced one of his cousins were out to overthrow him. So he started locking them up in the Tower of London and executing them. This was real Game of Thrones stuff. Women and children ended up on the hit list, with their only crime being that they were related to the royal family in some distant way. As we look back today, it seems barbaric, and it was. But in the 16th century, this type of behaviour was typical to a degree. One of many examples is Richard II, who was murdered by his cousin Henry Bolingbroke. That one act of treachery gave rise to King Henry V, a man remembered today as one of England's most successful monarchs. But it was also the seed that grew into the Wars of the Roses, the civil war that Henry's father had ended. What kept Henry awake at night was the thought that his fate just might be the same as King Richard II. One thing was for certain: he would do whatever it took to ensure that didn't happen.
I think it's fair to say that Henry VIII is known for the treatment of his wives, isn't he? For his 6 wives and how badly he treated them. And perhaps a history buff might be able to tell you that he also got rid of the monasteries and set up the Church of England. But what is so sort of tragic and fascinating equally is his worst acts ever in the history of his reign occurred at this period of time when he was in mourning for his beloved queen. The list of women, children, men of course as well, who were taken off to the Tower of London and dispatched pretty much ruthlessly in the year of 1538 is absolutely vast. And it was all G'd along by his henchman and hitman, Thomas Cromwell, who'd already brought down Anne Boleyn, of course, as we discovered last time. Thomas made sure that his enemies now faced the wrath of King Henry VIII.
The most shocking arrest was that of 66-year-old Margaret, Countess of Salisbury, who'd been governess to Princess Mary just 8 years earlier. She was tortured in the belief it would reveal plans to remove Henry from the throne, but none were ever discovered. Her only crime was remaining a Catholic to the end, which came on Tower Green one summer morning at the hands of a trainee executioner, personally selected by Henry, who, shall we say, did not do a very good job.
Even Thomas Cromwell knew that things were getting out of hand, and he knew that the only way he could get a handle on this situation was to sort out a new bride. The problem was, Henry's reputation was now spreading far and wide, and willing brides were proving hard to find. So Thomas decided the only way he could resolve this situation was by casting his net much wider. And so he started to look for a new queen in the kingdoms of Europe that would become known to us today as Germany.
It was here in Dusseldorf, the capital of the medieval kingdom of Cleves, that Thomas Cromwell found Henry's new wife. Anna was a royal princess, and while she had been mooted as a potential bride, she was quickly dismissed as she was definitely not seen as a beauty. Now, though, the situation was approaching crisis point, and so Hans Holbein was sent to paint her portrait. It's said that he undertook his work on the spot. Usually he would have made sketches which he would have worked up later using his renowned photographic memory. The court of Cleves, though, was having none of that. They wanted to see the work as it appeared. With the painting finished, with much approval from the court of Cleves, it was presented to Henry in the summer of 1539. The king liked what he saw, and the preparations for the marriage began at once.
Thomas Cromwell was absolutely thrilled. A new marriage, a new political alliance, and he had arranged it all. To celebrate and to lighten the mood at court, he decided there needed to be a celebration. So he sent to Italy and he hired a group of musicians to come over and play, and this is actually seen as the only positive note historians can find in the whole marriage of Anna of Cleves and King Henry VIII, because that group of musicians, they came from Italy and they brought with them a new instrument. It had been invented in Cremona by a lute maker called Andrea Amati, and that instrument was called the violin. Sadly though, as I mentioned, this was the one highlight, because the sort of comedy of errors began immediately. The great and the good of English society all travelled to Calais to meet Anna as she made her way from her kingdom of Cleves. And as she arrived on the docks in Calais, tons and tons of cannons fired. And everyone's dressed in their finery, looking gorgeous. There's music playing, Anna's processing off the boat. And unfortunately, no one could see a thing, because this thick, acrid smoke formed because of all the cannons firing meant that nothing was visible. And in fact, all you could hear, according to the diaries of people who were there at the time, was people coughing and spluttering. It sounds like an absolute disaster, doesn't it?
Whilst all this had been happening, Henry had been waiting patiently for Anna to arrive. When word finally reached him that she'd landed in England and was on her way to meet him, his excitement got the better of him, and he came up with a plan. Wouldn't it be fun if he and all his male friends dressed up in colourful hooded cloaks, like Robin Hood and his merry men, and then go and surprise her? You can imagine the boyish excitement as he set out to meet his new bride, no doubt convinced she would be thrilled to see him and of course find it all hilarious. Henry finally caught up with his fiancée at Rochester Castle.
So just picture the scene. Anna of Cleves, royal princess, who speaks barely a word of English. She's 25 miles from London, so she has no expectation of seeing anyone remotely important. She thinks she's got an evening to relax prior to meeting her new husband the next day, when into her room bursts Robin Hood and his merry men, laughing excitedly, as young boys do when they're being mischievous, although these weren't really young boys, were they? I can speak though through experience that even now today at 48, if I'm being mischievous, I still behave like I'm 10, and I'm sure that's what Henry VIII was doing. So they're there in a room, Anna terrified about what this might do for her reputation when you consider she's in her private room and suddenly it's full of men and she's about to marry King Henry VIII. She thinks, what on earth do I do? So she thinks, I know what I'll do, I'll completely ignore them. So, of course, that deeply offends Henry VIII, who is dressed as Robin Hood. So what do they do when things don't start going to plan? What do young boys do if they're being mischievous and things go all wrong? They run away, and that's exactly what they did. Out of the room they burst. And Anna's like sat there thinking, what on earth is going on? In a flash, in walks Henry VIII. He'd thrown off his Robin Hood outfit, he'd put on his royal robes, and Anna, to her credit, humbled herself before the king perfectly.
But the damage had been done. Ever the bashful teenager, King Henry's ego had been hurt beyond recognition. As he left Rochester Castle that night, he announced to all within earshot, "I like her not!" And he is said to have openly called her a Flanders mare. But on the 6th of January 1540, the wedding took place in the Queen's closet, the same place Henry had married Jane Seymour 3 years before. As tradition dictated, after the wedding, the royal couple went on a procession around London. Queen Anna was dressed in cloth of silver hanging with jewels. Hair flowing loose, it was surmounted with a coronet of pearls and precious stones interwoven with rosemary. One observer called it a goodly sight to behold. The king did not find it so. He'd already decided he did not like Anna at all.
The same could not be said for the people of England. They took to Anna of Cleves most heartily. Once again, England had a queen, and this was something to be celebrated. For the people of Helmsley, there was a particular honour, because the person in charge of a royal household is a Lord Chamberlain. And the Lord Chamberlain for Anna of Cleves was no other than Thomas Manners, the owner of Helmsley Castle, lord of all these lands that we've just been walking through. He was the man in charge of the new Queen's household. You can only imagine the gossip that must have been rippling through Helmsley, the excitement of how important their little town had become nationally. Now, the place where gossip used to ripple in the Middle Ages was definitely the churchyard, and Helmsley's gorgeous church lies just up ahead. Welcome everyone to the churchyard of All Saints Church, right in the heart of Helmsley. Now, when the congregation met here, most probably that first Sunday after King Henry's wedding to Anna of Cleves, you can just imagine the sort of hubbub and the excitement that there would have been. But as they made their way into the service that day, this was already an ancient place.
The building we see today is pretty much what the Tudor parishioners would have seen in 1540. It was built in the 12th century, around the time that Rievaulx Abbey was being built, but a church had most definitely been on site before then. The only real reminder of the original church is this 11th century Viking hogback gravestone.
So we are very much walking in the footsteps of our Tudor cousins as they gathered here on that cold and frosty January morning in 1540. But for us to really understand our Tudor ancestors, I think it's important that we just take a moment to consider how they dressed, because to a Tudor, your status was really portrayed with how you dressed, and only certain people could dress in certain ways. So let's have a little look into what people wore in Tudor times, and I think we should start with the ladies.
Tudor ladies started with a smock made of linen cloth, sewn at home from rectangles with two triangular gores at the sides. It gave a fullness at the hips and provided a hem that sat mid-calf length. On their feet, women wore hose, which were long sock length. In Tudor times, these were normally knitted, although the super-rich wore silk. The hose were held up with a garter tied below the knee. Next came the kirtle, a full-length sleeved dress that followed your body shape down to the waist. Then it flared out to your ankles. It was laced together, normally at the front. This was all topped with a gown. Hair was just as important as the clothes. There were two main styles, a bound ponytail or a plait, which could be single or in pairs.
Cotton padding was often added to hair to give it a thicker, more sort of lustrous look. And laces, leather laces, would be plaited into hair and then tied off at the end before then being secured. And then to finish hair off, there would then be a cap or a band put around the head to keep everything really secure and in place. So no hair really was on show, everything was controlled. The richer you were, the more lustrous materials you were allowed to use in your dress and also in what you put in your hair. That's the ladies. So what about the men?
Tudor men started with a shirt which at the start of the era was fairly simple. Then came the doublet and hose. The doublet gave warmth to the body, and the hose ran from the waist right down to your toes. Around the top of the hose were lots of holes, which were used to tie the hose to the doublet. Hose tended to get baggy, so young men might tie a garter around their calves. Fulfilling the role of the modern zip was a small flap of fabric tied around the waist, known as the codpiece. For many men, the garment they most aspired to was a gown. It dropped from the shoulders and was either knee length or ankle length. The quality of cloth you could purchase depended on your social status. This was because clothing was supposed to visually place you within society.
Once inside the church, it was time to get to grips with the new Church of England. And I think it's important to remember that in 1540, Protestants were still in the minority. The majority of the people who congregated here that Sunday morning would still have been Catholics at heart.
But what was this new Church of England like? Well, the first and perhaps biggest change from the Catholic Church was the removal of so-called relics. Many churches across England relied on the visitors generated from these relics. It might be a bone from Thomas le Becket or the hand of Margaret Clitheroe. Up until 1536, people wanted to be near these relics, and they would pay for the privilege. This meant the church could make money and stay afloat. Now that whole institution ceased, mainly because most of the relics weren't real anyway. The new Church of England also introduced, for the first time ever, the Bible written in English. Previously it had been in Latin, which only a priest could read. Now anyone could read and understand the words within.
It's difficult for me to comprehend a world where I couldn't understand any book, never mind the Bible. So you can imagine the absolutely huge impact that this had on communities. Suddenly everyone could pick up the Bible and understand it. And the man who was actually in charge of the flock here at Helmsley and in all the local churches now across the country went from being employed by the parishioners to being employed by the government. Effectively, he was the very first local council worker of the modern age.
Catholic churches were also bright and vibrant places, often with lots of wall art like this. These were actually created in the 19th century to honour that tradition. We will, though, through this series see some original wall art, which was at the time of the foundation of the Church of England all whitewashed over. We'll learn more about this strange new religion forced on the population of Tudor England as the series progresses. Right now, as the parishioners gathered here in January 1540, the Church of England was still very much in its infancy.
I don't know about you, but after getting up close and personal with the Tudors and finding out the clothes that they used to wear, it makes me wonder about the homes that they used to live in. Now, sadly, there's not too many Tudor homes left in Helmsley, but there is one that is rather spectacular. It's a Tudor mansion, and it lays in the heart of Helmsley Castle. And when I see you in part 2, we're going to get inside and explore it. So thank you so much for watching this first part, and I'll see you later on in the show with more England, a castle nation.
What a start. Oh, do you know what? That is one of my most favourite halves of anything.
Your most favourite halves of anything?
Yeah, of a first part.
What about sort of half a slice of your favourite bread?
No, you know what I mean.
Okay.
You fool. It was so wonderful to find comedy without
it's very funny.
looking for it. And I think what it does really well is it shows you the actual character.
It humanises them.
It does.
Yeah.
And for someone who understandably is seen as a monster, it actually shows you that wasn't the only aspect to his character. And I think that the reason why he was a monster was because he was completely out of his depth.
Yeah.
And that all stems back to his upbringing and the fact that he wasn't shown, he wasn't trained, he wasn't trusted, and he never should have been in the position he was in.
Yeah.
But I just sort of love about my age, slightly younger, a year. No, I think he was about 48 at the time.
Right.
I know. Let's get dressed up in hoods like Robin Hood. Completely in disguise.
That won't terrify her at all.
We've never met her before, but she'll still find it really funny. And of course she'll know it's me. I mean...
Why would you?
The thing is, though, I have totally been in that position where I've thought something would be a good idea until you do it. And then you do it.
Think,
yeah. And,
should not have done that.
And I think throughout his life, I think things like that happened. And I think those are the points when he normally becomes horrible. Because you do within you, when you feel silly, you can react in a really bad way.
Yeah.
So what a start. Love getting inside that church too.
Yes, beautiful church. That blue of that canopy.
Yeah.
Wasn't it fantastic?
Yeah.
It was like a sort of vivid, sort of turquoisey, sea sort of blue. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Just lovely. And still so much to come because, yes, there are more wives. More wives on the horizon. And finally, in part 2, we do get inside that Tudor mansion. We've strung it out long enough. But it's super cool when we do because we're going to find loads of links from castles to the homes that we all live in today, which is just, it's the whole...
It doesn't look like you might expect it to look.
No.
At all.
Really doesn't.
It's really cool, yeah.
Cool. Right now, though, it's time for me to ask, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
I do have some stuff.
I'm glad.
That's exciting.
I'd have looked pretty silly if you'd said nothing.
Oh, that's true. You would have. So, yeah, the first thing I've got are my pink prairie socks that I was knitting last time. So it's these ones.
I mean, that is such a great pattern.
Just
look at it.
The prairie socks was one of my earliest designs, I would say. Yeah, it's just perfect for lots and lots of different types of yarn. It's a unisex pattern as well, which is always great, I think. It's that kind of combination that just keeps you going. It's just a really great pattern, and I hadn't knit it in ages, so it was really nice to revisit it. This design has got a Eye of Partridge heel. Why is it called an Eye of Partridge heel?
Because it looks like an eye of partridge. There.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not seeing it, but...
I am.
All right, okay. That must be why, then.
The delves in the heel look like partridge eyes.
Oh.
Hence my comment last episode, your partridge eyes aren't winking.
So yeah, this is the yarn that I dyed up on that slightly heavier base that I spoke about last time. And I've got all of this...
Thank you, 3 by the Sea.
Thank you, 3 by the Sea, for sending me that thicker yarn that made me go off and try and find something that was similar.
You did buy it though, didn't you?
Yes, I bought it.
Yes.
Sorry, yes, I meant sent as in I bought it and then they sent it. So I've got this much left. I've weighed it. I've got 48 grams left. So these must have weighed 52, presumably, grams. I didn't weigh the skein at the beginning. Sometimes they weigh heavier, don't they? So, yeah, I've used just over half a skein. Cool. So I would have enough, definitely, to knit another pair if I put in a contrast heel, for example. And then I would definitely have enough. But I would need... What I might do, the socks I'm knitting for Bryony, the Witchy Socks... I definitely will have quite a lot left of each of the colours because I'm striping them. So I'm only going to use, there's a longer leg, but still I'll have quite a bit left. So I'll have a black, a green and a pink, won't I? So I don't know what that would look like together. I don't instantly think that they would go together. But I could do a little green pair with a pink heel or whatever. I'll have a few colours to go at. So yeah, these are finished. And... as you can see, these are a shorty pair. I've actually just measured them and the leg is just under 3 inches and that seems to be what I like. But these socks are going to be added to my sock stash for this year. So the sock stash is a year-long knit-along that we are running for our patrons, where we're basically just knitting socks and stashing them away for the end of the year. for either gifts or for yourself or for whatever you want. So if you are a patron and you want to join in with that, all of the details are in our Ravelry group. But basically all we are doing is knitting socks, any size, any shape, anything you like. If you want to post pictures, you can use the Ravelry group. If you're not in, or you don't use Ravelry, I should say, then at the end of the knit along, you can actually just email us a photo, and that will enter you in for the prizes that we're going to be having. So yeah, it just sort of prompted me to have a little look at what I've got so far in my sock stash, and I've got 4 pairs now, and it's April, isn't it? So I seem to be keeping up with that one a month thing, which I think is brilliant. That wasn't my intention, but I just seem to be naturally doing that. So this is my stash so far, and then the pair that I've just showed you. So this was my first pair, if you remember these. None of these have been worn because I'm just stashing them away. So this was leftovers from London House Yarns here in Yule Ball. And this is a Eden Cottage yarn. It's a 4-ply, it's Eden Cottage yarn, and it's the one that's commercially dyed, not hand dyed. So that's the first pair. This was the second pair. This was just a plain stocking stitch sock, and this used a Sherry Iris yarn. And then the third pair was my spring shorty socks. So this was the latest design that I published, and it's been really popular and well received. So thank you to everybody who's purchased this. So this is my third pair. And then these pink ones make 4. So that's super exciting that I've got 4 pairs. Let's take those off and stack them up. I have noticed that there seems to be a colour theme going on. There kind of is lots of pink with a dash of peach. Look, I might have to change the colour, but how lovely do they look? Look, it shows that this is my colours, isn't it? Oh, these are my colours, I should say. That was terrible English. I do have another shorty sock on my needles, and I'm going to be showing those next time because I'm going to pick those back up, and they're also a peach pair. So after I've done that one, I'll show you this actually, because after I've done the next pair that's on my needles, I dyed up some yarn for what will be the pair after that. I wanted to dye up a skein of blue yarn, and I came up with this one. Isn't it gorgeous? Now, this is a dye colour. It's my favourite blue, and I think it's discontinued now. It's Dharma dye, and it's Delphinium blue. I don't think you can get it anymore, but I do still have some. So I thought I'm going to dye one of those up in a skein. But what I did is I over-dyed it with some pink. So it gives you all of these lovely sort of purplish lilac-y tones with the blue. Oh, and I love it. This is just a standard fingering. It's not that thick a base. So after I've finished the pair that are currently on my needles that I'm going to show you next time, this blue will be going on the needles. So the next finished thing is my Scrappy Quilt Socks. So this is the pair, the first pair that I knitted, and these are truly scrappy. These are just leftovers of bits of yarn. I dyed all of these colours, but they are just leftovers. And these ones are now finished, and aren't they lovely? What I wanted with these colours that I chose, I wanted it to have that kind of cosy, scrappy quilt look that, you know, for example, in Little House on the Prairie, or I'm thinking more Little House in the Big Woods, that Ma might have made with leftovers of bits of their dresses and shirts and things like that. So it would be very eclectic in the look, and that's the sort of colour palette that I was going for. So exactly the same pattern as the peach pair, but with this I've done narrower stripes, you can see. I think I used 15 colours with this pair, and my stripes are narrower because the pattern repeat allows you to adjust the thickness of the stripes. And I've written into the pattern lots of sort of hints and tips on how to plan your sock to make sure that you end the toe with a full stripe rather than like a partial stripe. So there's details in the pattern about that. So that's my Scrappy Quilt Socks, and they, like I said, will be published on the 8th of May. And then the final thing that I finished this is an unexpected finish. I didn't expect this to be finished, but it's Bryony's crochet scarf. I've shown this a couple of times, I think, over the past few episodes. This is only finished because I got her to try it on recently. I said, just put this around your neck and see how it's feeling, lengthwise and things like that. And she put it around her neck and she's like, I quite like it like this because it's a lighter weight. Well, that was what she thought. She says, it's lighter. It doesn't feel as heavy as the other ones. And I could just wear it in spring and sort of late, into autumn. I said, well, do you want me not to do it double? Because this is crocheted and I crocheted it lengthwise, so this way. In all these greens, she wanted it in all the shades of green. And I've just used the granny stripe pattern by Attic 24. I chained 344 and I used a 3mm needle. And I just did one row of each colour, alternating between dark and light. I left the ends long, because they're now tassels. All I did for that was I just double knotted 2 of them together and just cut them straight. I thought that will be fine. But yeah, I was going to do this double, so I was going to crochet it twice the thickness and then fold it over and seam it. But when she tried it on, I said to her, do you want me to just leave it like that? And it's a lighter weight scarf. And she's like, could you? I said, well, yeah, of course I can if you want to. Because she just wants it to be something that she can, put under a coat. And it's not super long. I think in hindsight, I don't think it's really long enough. It should have been a bit longer. But for purposes, it comes all the way down to here. Oh, you can't see, but all the way down to here. It's perfectly fine as just, a scarf under your coat or your denim jacket. I think she's thinking that if she's got this around her neck and then she puts on a denim jacket, it's a really nice little pop of colour. So I said, yeah, if you want me to call this done, it's done. I was quite happy about that, to be honest. So yeah, that is done. I'm going to give it to her now. That's all my finished things.
Cool. Let's get back for the second part as we explore the Tudor mansion in England, a castle nation.
Welcome back to England, a castle nation, and we've made it inside the Tudor mansion. Now this was built in 1565 by Thomas Manners' grandson, Edward Manners, and it gives us a superb example of exactly what Tudor architecture used to look like. Now the first thing that you'll notice inside here that really is quite surprising are the walls. They're really sort of typical of Tudor architecture. Let's take a closer look.
These vertical wooden beams are set in what is known as stucco. It's made in a similar way to cement, but stucco also contains lime. This makes the surface breathable, so moisture doesn't build up behind and cause rot. The best part about stucco is, once it's up, it can be plastered, so it looks like this.
The Tudors also loved mullioned windows, and their presence tells us that these buildings were changing from fortified strongholds into more stately homes, because a mullioned window would be just useless in an attack.
Gone are the simple unglazed arrow slits of the 12th century, which would have covered the castle in the days of Walter Especk. These are much more reminiscent of an English stately home like Chatsworth. Edward Manners felt confident in installing them, as it was rare in Tudor times for a castle to be called into active duty.
So as the years had progressed, the owners of these drafty places were making the changes that they needed to make to change them from spaces like this into what we've just been walking through, with plastered walls and glazed windows. They were transitioning into the homes that we all know today. The really funny thing is, though, Edward Manners wasn't actually creating something completely new. He was repurposing something that was already here. Come on, I'll show you. It's fascinating. We've made our way into the basement of the 12th century latrine block. This was actually constructed in the 12th century, not long after Walter Especk died by his nephew. Now, this was obviously designed for a rather unsavoury purpose, but now, 300 years later, Edward Manners had big plans for it. He was going to turn this into state homes fit for the lord of the manor, and my goodness, he definitely succeeded.
How do we know? Because on the floor above, we find Edward Manners and his wife Isabel's private rooms. We know that because of their coat of arms, which is pretty spectacular just above that wooden panelled wall. It's decorated with mermaids, dolphins and fleur-de-lis. As we leave the Lord and Lady's private rooms behind, we enter Edward Manners' new Great Hall, which was now just starting to become known as the dining room. All around us, though, are still echoes from Walter Especk's original castle, like this original blocked-up window. And this original doorway, now 10 inches lower than the new floor height.
We have, though, digressed a little bit from our story, because in 1540, that building behind me that we've just explored would still not be in existence for another 20 years. Thomas Manners was the 13th Lord of Helmsley, and he was the Lord Chamberlain of the Queen of England. And he had a very important job to do, a whole household to manage. And one of the ladies who worked for him was called Catherine Howard.
From the moment King Henry laid eyes on Catherine Howard, he was captivated. She was 18 years old and incredibly small. Henry was over a foot taller than her. The French ambassador described her beauty as average, the same description he'd actually used for Queen Anna. But while she might not have been a beauty, she had clearly captivated the king. Catherine, though, had had her fair share of admirers, and it's pretty clear she was promised to another when the king started showing interest. Whilst her family could have pointed this out, they chose not to. It was probably a combination of ambition and fear. The king now had a fearsome reputation. Gone was the virtuous prince. Catherine's past was conveniently forgotten, and her family's quest for greatness began.
By the spring of 1540, Catherine Howard's star was rising fast. She was being showered with gifts from Henry, from land which had been conveniently confiscated from a felon. But he was also sending her 23 gifts of sarcenet, which I'm told is a luxurious fabric that's perfect for lining gowns. By the time summer dawned, the mood changed completely at court, because the king had decided it was time to get rid of Anna, because he'd chosen his new wife. But first, he would deal with the man who had saddled him with the Flanders mare.
So we turn one last time to Thomas Cromwell, the king's right-hand man through some of his most nefarious acts. The dissolution of the monasteries, the downfall of Anne Boleyn, and so much more had been masterminded by Thomas. He was the perfect hatchet man, and now a man who had lived by the sword would die by it. Henry had him arrested and taken to the Tower on trumped-up charges that he'd planned to marry Princess Mary and become king himself. now to deal with Anna of Cleves. Her last appearance as queen came on May Day in 1540. Henry decided the right approach was to claim, quite rightly as it turned out, that she'd been promised to another by contract. That had led to him never consummating their marriage. The only way this plan would work, though, is if Anna agreed to it. It's pretty clear that summer she had no idea what was coming. She was learning English, the public was starting to adore her, and she was thrilled in late June when she was moved from court to Richmond Palace, supposedly to keep her safe from the plague. It was, though, all a ploy. She'd only been there a day when some of the king's men came to inform her that the marriage was over. Anna fainted at the news.
When Anna of Cleves recovered, she listened soberly to what the king's men had to tell her, and it was probably Thomas Manners himself who was giving her this terrible news, and the answer she gave really was the only answer she could give. But I think she was genius in what she did, because she accepted completely what the king's men said, because I think she knew that if she said anything otherwise, she would end up on the chopping block with her head chopped off, just like Anne Boleyn had been. Now, surprisingly, in this situation, King Henry VIII, he loved that Anna had completely submitted herself to his will, and he showered her with gifts. He gave her land, he agreed to install her as the highest woman in the kingdom, apart from the Queen and any daughters he may have. So she was perfectly happy. There was only one condition: for her to take all those gifts, she could never leave England, and she never did. So Henry now was ready for his new marriage, and that marriage began immediately that July. He married Catherine Howard. Now, Catherine was a young, impetuous girl. She was out for a good time. She'd had a very dodgy past, and now she was being manipulated by her family to further their own agendas. But it seems that she completely believed the sort of miracle, the fairy tale that had befell her, and she was the new Queen of England.
Catherine's mistake started immediately. She decided to appoint her old fiancé as her personal secretary. His name was Francis Derham, and if the history books are to be believed, and I think they are, he's not the type of man you would want your daughter to bring home for dinner.
What didn't help as well was this was the point when Henry started to become the man that we all sort of remember him as. That's the really sort of huge monster, because in the months leading up to the wedding, his weight absolutely ballooned. He had a 57-inch chest and a 54-inch waist. Now, that was really all thanks to the fact that he couldn't really exercise, because he'd had a terrible injury to his leg jousting 16 years earlier. But that's sort of an excuse, because it didn't help that King Henry liked to eat and drink to absolute excess.
In the spring of 1541, Henry took to his chambers to try and recover a bit so he could enjoy some time with his young bride afterward. For 10 days, Catherine Howard was left alone, and it was in that moment she wondered if maybe she could find some fun elsewhere. An old flame came calling, and Catherine was waiting for him with open arms. His name was Thomas Culpeper, and for the next few months they picked up their relationship where they'd left off a few years earlier.
And now a story begins that will be a theme pretty much through the rest of this series, because whilst England was a country with a new religion, the majority of the population still had Catholic sympathies, and Catherine Howard's family were one of those families. So how unfortunate it was then that one of the sort of fervent supporters of the new Church of England found out about Catherine's rather tawdry behaviour. His name was John Laychelles, and he was more than happy to tell King Henry VIII all the tawdry details.
The King's court was abuzz with gossip and excitement. The Queen's personal secretary, Francis Derham, was arrested and taken to the Tower of London for interrogation. There he implicated Thomas Culpeper, who soon joined him in the Tower. All the sordid details gushed out. Catherine was confronted by the Archbishop of Canterbury, and she immediately collapsed and admitted to everything. The Archbishop states in his diary he found her in such lamentation that it would have pitied any man's heart to look upon her. Sadly for Catherine, Henry VIII was not any man. Catherine's fall was as fast as her rise. Francis Derham and Thomas Culpeper were first to go, executed at the Tower of London for high treason. On the 13th of February 1542, Catherine was taken to the same spot on Tower Green as Anne Boleyn. There she was beheaded. What makes this tale particularly tragic is Catherine and Anne were cousins.
Catherine Howard had most certainly been foolish, but she was only 21. She was still really just a child. She'd been manipulated by her family to advance their causes, and it had ended in the worst possible way. But no one here is blameless, because Catherine knew what she was doing when she picked up her relationship with Thomas Culpeper. And that was treason. The one thing you didn't do with a character like Henry VIII, and everyone knew what he was like, was cross him. But now Henry found himself in a unique situation, one he'd never faced before, because there'd always been a wife on view. Anne Boleyn had led to Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour had led to Anna of Cleves, and Anna of Cleves had then led straight on to Catherine Howard. Now it seemed, though, that the cupboard was empty and no wife was available.
So the king tried to get on with life alone, throwing himself into his role as father to his 3 children. Whilst his son and heir Edward was only 5 at this point, that year Scotland received their own royal birth, a girl who we'll come to know later in the series as Mary Queen of Scots. Henry tried to arrange a marriage between the kingdoms. Whilst this union never came to pass, another royal marriage was on the horizon.
Henry, now 51 and suffering more and more with bouts of illness thanks to his leg, had managed to fall in love again. This time it was with a lady called Catherine Parr. And she was actually a widow, but Catherine had a history at court because her mother Maud used to be one of Catherine of Aragon's favourite ladies in waiting. And it's sort of poetic to think that Henry's first wife would now be linked with his final wife.
Henry and Catherine were married in the summer of 1543, and it seems their relationship was one of genuine love. The history books tell us she was quite the lady. She loved shoes. In her first year as queen, she purchased 47 pairs. She also loved music, painting, greyhounds, flowers and herbs. Catherine threw herself into caring for her new husband. She would sit with his painful leg in her lap and administer long lists of cures for his many ailments herself. She also persuaded the king to start wearing gilt-framed reading glasses. When they were apart, Catherine would send him notes saying she missed him terribly and she couldn't take pleasure in anything until he returned.
For the next 3 years, life returned to a normality at court, not seen since the days of Catherine of Aragon. Henry was so at ease with his new Queen Catherine that he even left her in charge as he went off to France on official business. Many diaries from the time actually comment on how happy Henry seemed, happier than he'd been in decades. And it was at this moment, it was actually 1546, that Henry decided to capture his happiness, his family life on canvas. Think of it as a family portrait, if you will.
There is Edward by his side. His 2 daughters are present, but outside the inner circle, and there presiding over it all is Jane Seymour, the woman who finally gave Henry his heir. There's no sign whatsoever of any of the other 5 women who'd shared his life, but this photo was not about sentiment. It was a visual depiction of his last will and testament. When he was gone, this was the dynasty he was leaving behind. So how does the great Tudor king's story end?
With a bit of a whimper, I'm afraid to say, because unfortunately the king's illnesses had just been causing him so much issues. He decided the right thing to do was to send the family away for Christmas, which he did. They left in early December 1546, and unfortunately that was the last time any of them would see him, because King Henry VIII died on the 28th of January 1547. The man who had not born to be king had ruled for 38 years, and when he died, he'd been 55 years old. What a reign Henry had lived through. Was he a tyrant? Definitely, but he didn't start out that way.
As we have discovered, for decades he was happily married, and if a male heir had arrived, none of what followed would have happened. Henry VIII's monstrous behaviour was born from the kingdom he was never supposed to rule, but now that rule was over. You have to wonder if the population of Helmsley breathed a sigh of relief. Every month, it must have seemed like someone new had been executed at the tower. On top of that, you had a whole new religion to embrace. Talk about having your world turned upside down.
Now, with Henry gone, surely calmer heads would prevail, and the kingdom would become a much more peaceful place to live. Oh my goodness, they could not have been more wrong. But our time at Helmsley has come to an end, and if you're wondering how life finished here and how it became all ruined like this, fear not, because the story's not over. In episode 10, in the final episode of this series, we will return here to Helmsley and we'll finish its story. But for now, it's time for us to leave, and when I see you next time, we're going to be visiting a brand new destination as we uncover the story of England's new king. For now though, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for more England, a castle nation.
What an adventure! And what a character! His romanticism, his passion, his temper.
Yes.
I mean, oh my goodness, just the most enormous character in every possible way.
You can't deny that, can you, really?
With a 55-inch waist and a 57-inch chest.
He liked his food, didn't he, towards the end?
Absolutely.
And I think they ate a lot of meat.
Yes.
Didn't they?
Huge amounts of meat.
Yeah.
The stage is now set for the next 150 years. And if you think that the drama's over, you see, this is the mistake that people make. They sort of look at Henry VIII's period and think that's the end of the drama. You know, the stage is set for the sort of golden era of Elizabeth I. No. There's a whole lot of drama to come before and after the golden era of Elizabeth I. And we'll be picking up that story in the next episode. We will be discovering the forgotten king of England when England, a Castle Nation comes back next month. Because next time, it's time for more Kay's Classic Bakes.
Yes, indeed.
And it's like, heart
I know.
a flutter time.
If it works out.
You're going to love the next episode because Kay's going to be doing things you simply would not expect.
No.
And in the production of something absolutely regional.
Yep.
And so it's going to be wonderful to
You might not have heard of it if you're in the States, for example.
Well, you might not have heard of it if you're from Kent.
You might not have, I suppose.
So it's going to be really cool to share with you something, you know, I think it'll be the first time ever we've done something properly regional.
Yeah.
And it very much picks up on, we've just done 2 episodes in our radio show all about Yorkshire. So I won't say any more, otherwise I might give it away.
You might give it away.
So yes, next time it's more Kay's Classic Bakes.
Yes.
Now though, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
I've already mentioned our radio show, which came out last week, part 2 of our Yorkshire special. Radio show will be back next week, which is going to be very exciting.
Yeah.
We're getting ready for an epic run of Knitability issues. That's our magazine. In the next issue, I write an article all about the band Journey. There's also lots of other wonderful things.
We love them.
That's terrible.
Well, we love Arnell. We love the whole band.
Yes.
But we particularly love Arnell.
Yes. So my article is called An Unexpected Journey. Do you get it?
We get it.
And it's not all about Journey. It's actually all about my sort of history with music and what an absolute pain I am when it comes to music, because
yes.
I'm always looking for reasons not to like things.
Yeah.
So anyway, that issue is coming really soon. Jen, our Knitability editor, has been doing an absolutely amazing job, because not only has she been pulling together this issue, she's also been pulling together our big issue, 50.
Yes.
50 issues. It's coming in about 8 or 9 weeks' time, and we've got some massive articles going in there.
We do.
With some great, really great people. So you don't want to miss this one. You really
Very
don't.
exciting.
It is, yes.
Yes.
Very exciting.
A queen of knitting is going to be in there.
Oh, yes. We can't wait to meet her again.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Ha-ha.
Ha-ha.
It's very exciting. Do you remember our original Favourite Places to Knit series? Well, we're currently re-editing and re-releasing with lots of new footage and lots of new reading notes, and the next one in that series is coming out on the 16th of April, so don't miss that. That's for our Bakery Bear patrons. And speaking of exclusive content for our patrons, which of course comes every Tuesday and Thursday, we've got loads of tutorials and loads of reviews coming up over the next few weeks, which is going to be really exciting.
Very exciting.
And that is it. So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.
We will see you in 2 weeks for
Yay.
more.
See you soon.
Bye.
Who's it sitting and knitting? It's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. Find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down and watch Dan and Kay the bakery